So what we're doing this time is, we're doing about miniature interior decorating. So what we've done is just to make it a little bit simpler is I've split it into 4 sections. So we've got preparation, consideration, decorating, and finishing off. So the thing that we have with this is it's very different miniature decorating, whether or not you've got a new build or you're doing a revamp. So obviously if you've got a new build doll's house, it's a lot easier really. What you need to do first of all is prime all the pieces with either diluted tacky glue or sanding sealer. And that gives you a good base then for doing any painting or whatever you're going to do on top of it. The thing is with a new build, if you can actually do your painting before you put the house together, that is a lot easier than putting it together and then trying to paint it afterwards. So I know that sounds such a simple sort of idea, but very often if you've bought a doll's house from the show, all you want to do is get home, isn't it, and put it together. And then normally it just goes on a shelf and that's it. But I would recommend, and Bob would as well, that if you can paint these pieces and maybe paper them as well beforehand, it makes it 10 times easier. Now the thing is with a revamp, recently I've had quite a few conversations with miniaturists who are either doing refurbs of their own houses or they've actually bought them second hand. And I know we had quite a few houses on the charity stand and they've all gone. So it is quite popular at the minute to be doing refurbs. But obviously that is something totally different if you're considering decorating a refurb as to a new build. So what you need to do first of all, and I know this is like common sense, but you need to make it as easy as you can to be able to start doing the refurb. So I would say to take the front of the doll's house off first of all if you can, because again it's one of those things you sort of put it to the side and think you can get in, but if you can take it off the hinges first of all, it makes it a whole lot easier. Then of course you've got to remove the lights and the carpets and the flooring if you can, to avoid any damage. So the next thing you come on to with a refurb is to remove any wallpaper. Now the thing is, it's a bit like you're wallpapering at home on your full-size walls. If you're actually going to wallpaper on top of wallpaper, sometimes it does work, but sometimes it doesn't, and you get bubbles, don't you, from the wallpaper before. So the best thing to do is to remove any existing wallpaper, and the best thing to do is to take a craft knife and just sort of score, if you can, the wallpaper, or just something that will score it. Get a damp sponge over it, let it soak in, and then you need to get something like a palette knife, a little artist palette knife if you're on a little tiny property, or a bigger one if you're on a 12 scale one, and try and get it off that way. The thing is, that is really time consuming, and even when you decorate at home in full size, the preparation actually puts you off before you even start, doesn't it? But the thing is, the more time you take on this, the better results that you'll get eventually. So once it's totally dry, what I would do is to go over the walls and make a little sanding block. And all this is a little block of wood with a bit of sandpaper on, and it would enable you to actually get inside, even if it's a little bit, you know, a smaller property, and just to sand the walls smooth, because you've had wallpaper paste on there. Maybe it might have been painted. You might have had bits of paint from the ceiling that have come down. So what you need to do is try and remove any debris from all the walls. Again, very time consuming. If you're in a rush and you've done all of that, sometimes a hairdryer will just help dry it all out, so that, you know, sometimes if you've just got a day to do something, you want to get as much as you can done in a day. So to leave something, you probably have to leave it overnight to properly dry out. But if you get a hairdryer on it, that will just dry it out a little bit quicker. And then I'd also use your sanding block, because I think that's advisable to remove any loose paint and smooth down any painted surfaces as well. So as I say, something like that, you can do it on a little bit of thick card. It doesn't have to be a piece of wood. You know, sometimes when you get kits, or you get, you know, when you get these IKEA things and you get bits of wood left over, I know you probably keep everything as it is anyway, but just keep those extra little bits and just think, oh, I can, you know, a little bit of double-sided tape and a bit of sandpaper, and you've got a sanding block. In your preparation, if we were going to be redecorating this, obviously the flooring is fixed, isn't it? So we would recommend using something like low-tack masking tape just to tape around the area, because when you come to start doing your wallpapering or your painting, a bit like you do at home, you need to make sure you protect that. And if it was me, I'd probably get something that was waterproof and tape over the whole of the floor, because however, even at home, again in full size, however hard you try and however you think you're going to be very precise, it never quite works, does it? Your mind just has to go. So low tap masking tape. And then just in case I forget to say it later on, because I might, because my head's full of all sorts of things to tell you, you must only remove the masking tape once it's fully dry. Everything's fully dry, because if you do it when it's slightly wet, it all puckers and everything, and it looks worse than it does if you hadn't let it dry. But again, you can use a hairdryer if you want, just to sort of dry it all off. So what we would say with that is that preparation in all of this is key. So just like at home, your preparation gives you the basis for how the rest of it's going to look. But the thing is, really, it's very, very time consuming. So I think if you're going to undertake a decorating project, whether or not it be a new build or a revamp, you've got to make sure that you have plenty of time. Yeah? So right, the next thing is consideration. Do we paint or do we paper? Even if you're going to paper, you're probably going to need some paint for your mouldings and doors and things. So if you're going to paint, we would recommend that you just use ordinary matte emulsion. So this is Farrow and Ball, and I've only got this because one of my friends had some tester pots on a wall, and she said, "Oh, Jane, would you like some match pots?" And it's like, "Oh yes, thank you very much." And they were all Farrow and Ball. So that's lovely, isn't it? But you can just go to B&Q or wherever, and I would get a matte emulsion, because I think that looks better than something with a bit of a sheen on. If you get satin, I would use that for the woodwork, like for your skirting boards and for your moulding. If you go for something like enamel paint, it's too shiny nowadays. So stick to emulsion, matte for your walls and for your ceiling, and then your satin for any woodwork. Wallpaper. So when you're buying wallpaper, we would recommend that you buy good quality wallpaper. So I'm just going to pass that round there. If you can just feel that's quite a good quality paper that's been printed on there. I'll just pass this round here. Pass that down there. So can you feel, there's another one there. Can you feel the quality of that? It's been nicely printed. It's quite thick. Now, the thing is, there's lots of people do wallpaper. So all you need to do is go online. There's people that do smaller scales, 24th and 48th. There's people who do 12th scale. The charity stand has been donated loads of wallpaper, so have a little look down there after if you're looking for 12th scale. You can actually print your own wallpaper. There are some sites that let you download the actual pattern and design and you print it yourself. That is fine, but you have to use good quality print settings and you have to use good quality paper. If it's an inkjet printer, then you need to actually spray it with a clear spray to actually make sure you're fixed in the colour. Because as soon as you come to then put it on the walls further along the line, then what's going to happen is that the wallpaper paste is going to make the inks run. So you can do it yourself, but just proceed with caution really when you do that. Sometimes by the time you've bought the right quality photo paper, then you've bought your clear spray, you can actually have bought it quite a bit cheaper. But it's sometimes, again, if you're trying to do a lot of things yourself, it's a good, it is nice to have a go. It's good to have a challenge. Right, so we're going to go, I'm trying to do this quite quickly because I know you still want to go around the fair. So we're going to go on to decorating now. So painting. So as I said before, on a new build, if you're able to paint the pieces beforehand, that is much, much better and much, much easier. If you've got flat pieces, if you're working on a 12th scale property, just an ordinary roller that you'd use for your decorating at home. Had a bit of joy when I went to a different decorating shop and I saw these little tiny handles. These are like radiator rollers, and they actually, I've used them now, but they actually have those at half the size. So that's exciting, isn't it? And that's great if you have like 24th scale. So you get joy in, places where you're not expecting it, don't you? And then, you know me by now. And then if you're doing 48 scale, you can get these little rollers. We got these in Holland a few years ago, but I know they're still being made. And again, they're great. And the thing is, when you use a roller, as we know from our own walls at home, everything's a lot smoother, isn't it? And it's much nicer. I did have a sponge in here somewhere. If you want to have a little bit... Oh, here we are, yeah. Thank you. Good eyesight. So another nice thing to use is a sponge, particularly if you want to get a little bit of texture on your paint, but not too much. If you just dip your sponge in some paint and sponge the wood, you get quite a nice finish. You get quite a nice even finish, but it's not flat. If you're actually going to need to paint in your doll's house, because if you've got a rebuild or a revamp, you're going to struggle really, aren't you, getting your hand, a roller in, and then you've got all the corners as well. So what you really need to use is a flat bristle paintbrush. And if you use a flat bristle paintbrush, you'll find it a lot easier to smooth out the paint. If you're using a rounded head, then you get channels in your paint. So use flat bristles. What I would say is as well, when you're doing your painting, you need to probably paint the ceilings first, but we all know that. So the thing is, when you've got a built doll's house, it's quite difficult, isn't it, getting in and under and painting the ceiling. So what Bob said was, he said, don't be afraid if it's if it's not too big, of turning your doll's house upside down, putting it on its roof, so that you can actually get in. So make it easy for yourself. Don't actually try and sort of get your head in and get your hair covered with paint. I have a little story here because there was a lady that used to come to the Miniatures Club, Dorothy, and she said to me, she said, my son phoned me tonight, she said, and he said, hi Mum, what have you been doing? So she said, I've been painting the living room ceiling. So he went absolutely mad with her because she wasn't able to walk very well. She was slightly disabled. So he'd gone mad with his mum and said, that's ridiculous. Anyway, she'd been painting a doll's house ceiling. So whenever I think of doll's house ceilings now, I always think of Dorothy. And I just thought that's such a nice story, isn't it? So if you're not able to paint your full-size house, at least you can paint your miniature one. Another little thing that I've written on here is, when you've got a doll's house, sometimes you need to touch things up. So sometimes you can do all these things and then you can come back to it for some reason. You might need to touch up. Now, I don't know about you, but of sea green, I've got about 6 different sea green paints. So it's knowing which one it is, which make it is. And obviously they're all called sea green. So ideally, either on the back of your doll's house or underneath it, if you have a label or just a pencil, just to write on the make and the actual shade of the paint that you've used. And it does work out, because if you try and mix, you can never quite mix the right colour if you can't remember what it is. And the thing is with doll's houses, we've all had them, we've had them for years and years and years, haven't we? So it is a good idea to do that. So that was just a little note on here. When you're actually painting, it's always a good idea to paint two or three coats. Don't actually apply too much paint so that you don't get any drips and you get a nice smooth finish. And allow each one to thoroughly dry before you paint another. Because again, I've done it at home. You think it's all dry, you put another lot of paint on and it brings off that previous layer. So the paint has to cure. As much as it does on your walls at home, it has to cure on these doll's houses as well. But again, if you've got a hairdryer, you can actually speed up the process. I'm not quite so keen on that because I don't think with paint, I think it's fine for like drying something if you've taken all your wallpaper off. But I think when it comes to paint and glue, I think it's actually made in a way that it is meant to take those few hours to properly dry. Would you agree with me? Some things you can speed up the process, but I don't think you can really with sort of paint and glue. And then the other thing is, if you're painting a doll's house and you need something like white paint and you've got your big tub of paint and you've got it on the table here and you're doing all of this and you've got your paint brushes, very, very easy to knock that over. So I would recommend decanting down into something a little bit smaller or putting it in a dish or just something, because when you're a bit you're doing one thing and then you make yourself a cup of tea and then the next thing it's gone. So don't be afraid to decant down. Again, put a little label on as to what it is. So, right, we're going to go on to wallpapering next. Now, the thing is, going back to new builds and revamps, if you can, and you can wallpaper on a new build without putting it together, that is a lot easier. However, you've got to match up then your patterns and things, and that can be quite difficult. So it might be at this stage that you want to actually, you've painted all your ceilings and everything that needs painting, or if you've got any walls, paint those. Sometimes it's a good idea if you've got a new build to maybe dry fit it together and make a note of which walls are which, so that you know, rather than thinking, oh, I think that was that, and then find you've done the wrong one. Which I know sounds daft, but you know, the thing is, Bob would do that, but I wouldn't. I'd just go into it and start. So the thing is, do be a little bit careful, but I think probably my choice would be is to probably wallpaper a property when it's built. You know, but as I say, that is really up to you. So when you're putting wallpaper on walls, what you've got to do is get your measuring right. Who loves measuring? Nobody does, do they? No. So it is very, very difficult to measure and get your wallpaper cut precisely. I'm not very good at measuring. That's why I have Bob. So obviously something like a metal ruler, steel ruler, and these little tiny ones are quite good. So obviously when you're measuring, you can get in like that and you can measure okay. The problem comes when you're trying to measure like the height and you've got a ceiling, you can't always get in. So sometimes the best thing to do is to get a piece of card and then sort of, you know, if you put it in that way, because you can't, you've got your ceiling on, draw a little line, cut it down, check it again. Yeah, make sure that you can, make sure you do it that way. Yeah, yeah, that's the best thing to do, because otherwise you're going to struggle to try and actually get the proper measurement. Even if you're using like a retractable tape measure, they're awful, aren't they? And they've only got to kink a little bit and they're gone. So that's a good little tip really for that. When I was talking to Bob about this, he said, measure twice, cut once. Yeah. So when you leave, I've done you a little thing on the laser so you can put a little bit of ribbon or string or something on it, and you can tie that to your toolbox so that you don't forget. But I mean, that's a very old saying, but that was what Bob said when I was talking to him about this. What Bob also said, because he used to decorate houses years ago for a doll's house shop. So imagine that this has got a side on it here. So what he said was, it's always better if you have the back wall in one full piece, because that is what you look at, and work round then maybe to the left-hand side, and then you can match up your pattern on the side walls. But the thing is, the more that you can fix in your doll's house in one piece, the better really, because it's terrible matching up patterns. It is really, really hard. So try and look at the back first in one full piece and then bring it round, and then if needed you can actually match it up, because that is what you see. I bought this one in particular because this has got the chimney breast. So if you're decorating something with a chimney breast, I would actually put all the paper around, and then when it's dry you can get a sharp craft knife and actually cut away the paper, because you're going to have your surround covering it as well, just to make life a little bit easier for you. If you've got things like Leanne was saying, if you've got things like windows and doors, that makes it even more complicated, because what you've got to do then is like do your template, work out where everything is. And the thing is, it can be a bit costly this, because you've only sort of got to make one little mistake and you're done. Yeah, so yeah. Yeah, so actually make yourself a template, and that works quite well when you're on these like 48, if you're on petite properties, a little 48 scale property, you really notice if the wallpaper isn't right there. So again, if you can make a paper template and know that that definitely fits. The other thing is, when you're trying to actually paper a house and you're doing your template, what you need to do is to actually, I don't know if you can see this, is to use something like a credit card to actually fit it into the corners, because I've done this myself, that you think you've cut everything perfectly, then you actually fold it right into the corners and then you find that you've cut it too short, which is really annoying. So again, if you can, when you're actually fitting your paper, what you need to do is try and fold it, pre-fold it, so you know where it's going to go, and use your card on your measuring when you're still doing the first stage, and actually make sure it fits in on each, wherever it's going, and make sure it's nice and neat. But something like a credit card is a lot better. That if you try, I've done this. The thing is, when I'm telling you all these things that go wrong, it's because I've done it myself. So obviously you think a metal ruler, push it in here. Now if you do that when you've got the wet wallpaper, it just goes straight through. Yeah, and it's awful, isn't it? And you've wasted your paper. So something like this isn't quite as harsh, really. So I would use something like that. It is better, as I say, if you can actually fold it, do your templates, and be really certain that it's going to fit. The thing is, double check if you're going to if you're matching any patterns. Keep double checking that you've got that right, because again, that's really annoying. Bob was saying he'd been somewhere and they'd done a beautiful job on a house, but they haven't actually matched up the pattern quite well. So it shows, doesn't it? And the thing is, sometimes it's better buying an extra piece of wallpaper just in case. And the thing is, with any extra bits of wallpaper that you have, you can line your drawers, well, even bigger drawers at home, but you can line your miniature drawers. And they always look really nice when they've got a little bit of wallpaper, don't they, in the bottom? I've put it in the backs of cabinets. You've probably seen some of the cabinets I've got, and I've just put a piece of wallpaper in the back. And anybody actually buying a made up furniture will always go for the one with a piece of wallpaper in than one that's not got wallpaper in. So just a nice way of using them up. And of course, if you do cards and things, you can use it for that. So when it actually comes to putting the wallpaper in, we recommend really that you use ready mixed wallpaper paste, because it's lovely and smooth, and literally you can sort of use it with a brush and there's no sort of lumps or bumps in it. You can actually mix your own wallpaper, but again, you've got to make sure that you've got it all beautifully, beautifully smooth, because the thing is, at this scale and smaller, you're going to notice, aren't you, if you do get any lumps and bumps in it. So, ready mixed wallpaper paste is a lot easier to use. And again, that's what Bob would recommend. So, do you actually put your wallpaper paste on the paper, or do you put it on the wall? So again, that's preference. But Bob said, again, if you put it on the wall, that's a lot easier, because it gives you a little bit of manoeuvrability then with your paper. Whereas if you put it straight on your paper and you put it in, that your paper's porous and it sticks to the, it goes on here, which won't be porous because you've obviously done your sanding sealer or your glue on there first of all. So it is a personal choice, but probably better on the wood. Yeah, so another thing Bob said to me, because we went to Penrith last weekend to pick some things up for the charity stand. So it was a bit like an interview. I was interviewing Bob on decorating. So he's given me little tips on this. So he said, the thing is with wallpaper paste is you need enough, but not too much, because otherwise it all sort of spurts out and it makes a bit of a mess. And the thing is, I know you can wipe it off your wallpaper, but you want to keep your wallpaper as clean as you can, because if you're using something with a white background, you can end up seeing a bit of a stain, can't you, on it? So just be, a bit sparing with it, but use enough. And the thing is really with this, again, like we said last time, preparation is key. The thing with this is now, it's patience is key, because you can't rush anything like this at all. So it is going to take quite a while to do your decorating, the preparation and the actual decorating. But obviously it does pay off in the end. Now, what we've not talked about is like your skirting boards and things like that. So are you obviously, like again in your full-size home, you need to have painted those beforehand before you do any papering. I would recommend, if you've got things like picture rail, if you're on a new build, you can actually put that in afterwards, just on top, because it makes it a little bit easier. But of course, if you're doing a revamp, then obviously you've got that dreaded thing of actually getting your paper fitting in perfectly. So there is a lot to think about. So it is easier really if you can decorate a house without anything in. Doors and things, they obviously need doing first of all. So once you've done all of that, you're not finished yet because you've got all your flooring and curtains and things to do. And then if that isn't enough and you're revamping a doll's house, you can then go on to the outside. So it's always best to do the inside first and then go on to the outside. So I know it all sounds a bit exhausting, even though it's a doll's house, but it is simpler than doing it in full size, isn't it? And the thing is, if it all sounds too much and you don't want to, you know, decorate a doll's house, there is somebody somewhere that will decorate it for you. They'll decorate, you know, they'll paint the outside and do whatever you want on the outside and decorate the inside. So, you know, all is not lost, really. So that is the end of my talk. Oh, it was nearly half an hour, wasn't it? I thought it was only going to be about 20 minutes. So thank you very much.